What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. AEW invades the Big Apple as Grand Slam begins on the 22nd September edition of AEW Dynamite, with the huge Bryan Danielson vs Kenny Omega headlining the show. Join us now as we look at the good, the bad and the downright ugly of this week's Dynamite, as well as the latest news, including WWE granting another huge release, AEW makes a huge achievement, AEW pass on a fired WWE superstar, CM Punk brings back a classic look and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now, as always, we don't recap the show but just provide you with the good, the bad and the downright ugly. As always, we start off with the good as number one, opening up with an absolute banger. Woo, what an opening bout, and without a doubt the best free match fans have seen on television in a long time. Omega vs Danielson was everything the fans expected, as both men put on a Mac classic, the likes of which we'll never probably see on free television ever again. This match didn't set the bar, it destroyed it, as Omega and Danielson seemed to challenge the wrestling world to top this on TV. There were so many great spots, and what about Omega's running V-trigger? Like, damn. Now, we understand that this isn't going to be everyone's free match on television best match, but like we said, wrestling is subjective. Everyone has their own opinion on matches, and this was one of the best, if not the best we've seen on free television. What's the best match you've seen on free television? Let us know in the comments down below. Number 2, flipping the script. Now, once again, AEW proved it's willing to toss out tropes, this time the timeless one that says non-title matches will have a decisive winner. AEW made the right decision sending this to a time limit draw, as it suggested Bryan could have won the match with more time, but it didn't confirm he would have. Both men looked absolutely fantastic and were well protected, obviously setting things up for a classic championship clash on pay-per-view. AEW's willingness to start the show with the main event was a super surprise, as fans know big money matches typically take place at the end of a show, but thankfully the rest of the show didn't disappoint, and AEW's willingness to stray from the formula was refreshing. Number 3, Sting still smashing it. Did Sting discover the fountain of youth? How else to explain the Stinger's pristine performance in his and Darby Allin's brilliant bout against FTR? At times Sting looked to be in his prime, and while FTR deserves loads of credit for making him look so good, Sting has been incredibly impressive. Nonetheless, AEW needs to be cautious with how much it uses him, and any other legends for that matter, because number 1, they shouldn't push him too much over full-time wrestlers, and number 2, it needs to keep Sting's appearances special. What did you guys think of his performance? Let us know in the comments down below. Number 4, Punk's potent promo. Punk's promo provided another reminder of how AEW is capitalizing on his popularity by having him show up to cut promos and show his love for the fans. Punk even addressed critics who for some reason are bothered by the fans' genuine affection for the Second City Saint. Naturally, the promo was much more than getting a cheap pop from the New York fans, it also set the stage for Punk's match on Rampage against Team Taz's powerhouse Hobbs. Punk's statement that Team Taz failed to finish him was good, but his line, "You slept on the legend of CM Punk, and it's not my job to wake you up, it's my job to tuck you in," was perfect. Don't be surprised to see it on a t-shirt in the near future. Number 5, a classic crowd. Wrestling fans know that there are some markets that always seem to deliver when it comes to loud and exuberant crowds, one of them being New York City. The fans at Arthur Ashe Stadium kept the Big Apple's reputation going strong, as they added another layer of excitement to Grand Slam. Naturally, even the rowdiest crowd will eventually sit on their hands if a show disappoints, but Grand Slam was fantastic from beginning to end, and the fans responded very loudly. And Ruby Soho main events. Now, you've come a long way, Ruby. She showed the wisdom of AEW in bringing in the talented performer, someone who presents a different persona for AEW's women's division, and more importantly, a talented worker. It was good to see Soho get her main event spot against Dr. Britt Baker, and she showed she has much to offer. Perhaps AEW pushed her into the main event too soon, but for last night, she was sensational. Now, there was nothing bad and obviously nothing downright ugly. Grand Slam's first night had nothing bad to mention, and while critics may complain AEW put on a pay-per-view quality show for free, the reality is that AEW delivered some mighty fine wrestling without giving away the proverbial farm. Last night's show served as a reminder of how to deliver mostly sizzle and just enough steak to keep fans feeling they were promised one thing and delivered another. Again, anyone who expected Omega vs Danielson to go to a conclusive finish is either ignorant of wrestling booking or desperate to criticize the show. This was a damn fine show from start to finish, and once again AEW is getting things ready for its next pay-per-view as it builds up new story arcs and continues existing ones. The only concern AEW should have is finding a way to deliver the right amount of star power each week without leaving fans disappointed in subsequent weeks. And if you're mad that we've given AEW no bads, we have given SmackDown no bads in the past. We just know a damn good show when we see one. What do you guys think of AEW Grand Slam? Let us know in the comments down below. Now let's move on to the news. Our first story looks at AEW's Grand Slam's awesome achievement. Topping the news today is the riveting report on Grand Slam's ticket sales. AEW's Grand Slam event at Arthur Ashe has been well received by many wrestling fans, and it appears the event made a big splash in wrestling history thanks to the outstanding number of fans who flocked to Arthur Ashe Stadium. The event, which AEW listed as being a sellout, was reportedly AEW's biggest box office gate to date, and Meltzer added on Wrestling Observer Radio that the gate would have been the third largest non-WWE gate in the history of pro wrestling in the US. Attendance-wise, it's the biggest for a non-WWE event since 1999. This is a massive achievement and not only a sign that AEW is doing fantastic numbers in 2021, but that pro wrestling may be undergoing a big resurgence all around. The WWE's recent Madison Square Garden Super Show reportedly set a box office record for SmackDown, another sign that wrestling is far from finished. What do you guys think of these numbers? Is AEW's Grand Slam show an exception or a sign that both the promotion and wrestling in general is on the rise as far as popularity goes? We'll be eager to see how well the show performs in its ratings. Next up, WWE granting another release. Now it looks like another WWE superstar is looking to exit Titanland and the WWE is more than willing to let them loose. Meltzer discussed how Lucha House Party member Gran Metalik has asked for his release, with Dave Meltzer observing on the Wrestling Observer Radio that I think there's a good chance that they'll release him because their mentality is different. In 2019, it would have been much different because they wouldn't want him to go. As the WWE continues cutting its roster, it's a little surprised that the company is willing to release someone who is not being used. Next up, CM Punk blasts Hulk Hogan again. It looks like CM Punk hasn't changed his opinion of the Hulkster, as Punk, who has spoken out in the past about his disdain for the Hulkster, put any doubts to rest as to whether he's changed his views on the WWE icon. Punk recently appeared on Brandon Walker's podcast and commented on who some of wrestling's biggest stars are. You're throwing my name in the hat with someone like Steve Austin, who arguably the biggest star our business has ever seen. A lot of this is subjective though, right? You can't make the argument like, oh no, Hulk Hogan's a bigger star than Steve Austin, but then you look at the business periods and errors and box office receipts, and like all that other stuff, I think Hogan's a piece of shit, so obviously I'm gonna be like, Steve Austin, yay. That's another podcast. Fans shouldn't have to worry about seeing Hogan confront Punk in AEW as Tony Khan has banned him from the promotion. Next up, AEW pass on a fired WWE superstar. Now there's bad news for former WWE superstar Buddy Murphy, as it appears that All Elite Wrestling passed on the chance to sign the talented Tumbler. According to Meltzer, they passed on a lot of people. It looks like they passed on Murphy, who is obviously a great wrestler. The good news is that it looks like Impact Wrestling is eager to sign Buddy, a wrestler who brings considerable skill to the ring and who likely would have been lost in AEW's ever-growing roster. Where would you guys like to see Murphy wrestle? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, a new title coming to AEW. Well, it looks like AEW may finally be adding a second title to its female division, with another singles title reportedly on the way. The Mat Men podcast Andrew Zarian broke the news with Wrestling News' Paul Davis summarizing Zarian's report as follows, saying, Zarian appeared on Denise Salcedo's Speaking Now Pro Wrestling show after Dynamite Grand Slam and broke the news that secondary women's championship will be called the TBS Championship, so it's a sister championship to the TNT Championship that is currently being held by Miro. AEW's women's division has noticeably improved over the last 2 months with the addition of new talent. However, are they ready for another title in the singles rank? Should they hold off? Let us know in the comments down below. And finally, a little spoiler as CM Punk brings back a classic look. Last but not least, fans at the Grand Slam edition of Rampage have posted spoilers about CM Punk's big match against Will Hobbs, and while we aren't going to spoil any of the match results, we will let you know that Punk is back to wrestling with trunks, at least for this match, as opposed to full tights. Which look do you guys prefer? Let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.